October 1992 in Erlangen, Germany, began like any other autumn, with leaves turning shades of red and gold and the air crisp and cool. But for one young woman and her family, it would become a month marked by tragedy that no one could have anticipated. She was 18, bright, full of plans for the future, and just discovering she was pregnant. One evening, a sudden car accident changed everything. Emergency responders arrived quickly, pulling her from the wreckage, but it was immediately clear her injuries were devastating. She was rushed to Erlangen University Hospital, barely clinging to life as her parents followed in terror. Doctors moved quickly in the emergency room, assessing her condition and attempting to stabilize her fragile body. Every test revealed the severity of her brain injury, and the possibility of survival appeared grim. She was unresponsive, showing no signs of consciousness, and the machines surrounding her worked tirelessly to keep her heart beating. Amid the chaos, one critical fact weighed heavily on everyone: she was pregnant. The hospital team faced an unprecedented dilemma. Could they keep her body alive to give the fetus a chance? The parents, overwhelmed with fear and grief, could barely comprehend what the doctors were asking. Hours passed as neurologists conducted tests to determine the extent of the damage. Brain activity was minimal, then non-existent, and multiple examinations confirmed the tragic truth: she was brain dead. Doctors explained to the family that brain death meant she was legally and medically dead, despite the steady hum of life support machines. Her parents struggled with the reality, unable to reconcile the fact that their daughter was gone, even as her body continued to breathe. Yet intertwined with their grief was the tiny, fragile life growing inside her. For them, every heartbeat of the fetus became a flicker of hope in an otherwise unbearable darkness. The hospital convened an ethics committee to discuss the next steps, knowing the decision carried immense moral weight. Keeping a brain-dead patient on life support solely for the sake of a fetus was almost unheard of, and there were no clear precedents. Doctors outlined the medical realities. The fetus had a chance to survive if the mother's body remained stable, but complications could arise at any moment. They described the potential risks, the intensive monitoring required, and the uncertain outcomes. The family faced an impossible choice: respect their daughter's autonomy as a deceased patient or allow her body to serve as a vessel for her unborn child. The gravity of the decision weighed heavily on everyone involved. After long discussions and tearful deliberation, the parents agreed to continue life support, hoping their grandchild might survive. Medical staff implemented a careful regimen to maintain her body, monitoring blood pressure, oxygen levels, and fetal development around the clock. Nurses and doctors treated her with utmost care, speaking softly and handling her with dignity despite the grim circumstances. Each day brought both hope and fear, as the fetus grew slowly but steadily inside her. The story began to spread quietly among hospital staff and soon reached the public, raising profound ethical questions. People wondered whether the unborn child's potential right to life justified the extraordinary measures being taken. As days turned into weeks, the hospital became a center of intense focus. The young woman's parents visited frequently, speaking to her as if she could hear them, leaving flowers and photographs on her bedside. The medical team coordinated every aspect of her care, ensuring that her body remained as stable as possible for fetal development. Journalists and ethicists began following the case, turning the hospital's halls into a place of public fascination and private sorrow. Every heartbeat of the fetus became a moment of fragile hope, watched by doctors and family alike. Meanwhile, debates emerged across Germany about the ethics of life support and the rights of unborn children. Despite careful medical management, complications began to arise. The woman's body, though maintained by machines, could not function perfectly without a living brain. Infections, hormonal imbalances, and organ strain challenged the medical team daily. They fought to stabilize her, knowing that the fetus depended entirely on her body's fragile equilibrium. For the family, each day was a mixture of hope and dread, with every monitoring report carrying the weight of potential heartbreak. The parents held onto the possibility that their grandchild might survive, even as the young woman herself could never know. By mid-November, the situation reached a critical point. On November 16, after weeks of life support, the fetus tragically died during a spontaneous abortion. The family, already exhausted from emotional turmoil, faced the unbearable loss of both futures they had hoped to protect. The medical staff grieved alongside them, aware that despite their best efforts, life could not always be preserved artificially. Public reaction was swift and intense, with newspapers and television reports sparking nationwide debates. Ethicists, doctors, and lawmakers questioned the balance between maternal autonomy and fetal rights and whether the extraordinary measures had been justified. Across Germany, people struggled with the same difficult questions faced in that hospital room. Hospitals and medical institutions began examining the case closely. Policies for brain-dead pregnant patients were vague, and the Erlangen incident highlighted the urgent need for clearer guidelines. The The tragic story became a touchstone in discussions of reproductive ethics, medical responsibility, and patient autonomy. Medical students and professionals studied the case, analyzing every decision, every ethical consideration, and every medical intervention. Lawyers and legislators debated potential legal frameworks that could prevent such dilemmas in the future. The case became emblematic of a broader societal struggle to reconcile science, morality, and human emotion. The family, though heartbroken, became reluctant symbols of the ethical questions surrounding life and death. Their private grief was suddenly a matter of public scrutiny, with people questioning their choices and motives. Yet they defended their decision, emphasizing their hope that even a tiny chance of life for the fetus was worth pursuing. Interviews and stories recounted their anguish, their love for the young woman, and the impossible decisions they faced. Across the country, empathy mingled with judgment, highlighting the deeply personal nature of such tragedies. For many, the Erlangen baby case became a lens through which to examine society's values and the complexity of human life. The hospital staff reflected on their own roles and responsibilities. Doctors and nurses grappled with the emotional toll of maintaining life support for a patient who could never recover. They discussed the boundaries of medical intervention, the ethics of hope, and the human desire to preserve life at all costs. Some expressed doubts, wondering whether their efforts had prolonged suffering, while others found solace in knowing they had given the fetus a chance, however brief. Their experiences would influence hospital protocols and medical education for years to come. The case became a catalyst for conversations about the limits of modern medicine and the moral obligations of healthcare providers. The national debate grew louder in the weeks following the tragedy. Media outlets dissected every detail, presenting the story as both heartbreaking and ethically complex. Public opinion was divided. Some praised the doctors' and families' efforts to save the unborn child, while others condemned the continuation of life support for someone who was already dead. Newspapers published editorials questioning the boundaries of medical intervention, and talk shows invited ethicists and clergy to discuss the moral implications. For many Germans, the Erlangen baby case forced them to confront uncomfortable questions about life, death, and the value of potential life. It became clear that the story was about far more than one family. It was a mirror reflecting society's deepest ethical struggles. Ethicists debated whether a brain-dead woman could be considered a suitable host for fetal development. Philosophers argued about autonomy, consent, and whether her body could ethically be used to sustain another life. Religious leaders weighed in, offering varying interpretations about the sanctity of life and moral obligations toward the unborn. Medical journals began publishing analyses, each exploring different aspects of the case, from intensive care management to reproductive ethics. Universities included it in curricula, challenging students to think critically about the intersection of medicine, law, and morality. The case became a point of reference for international scholars as well, demonstrating that the questions it raised were universal. The hospital itself became a place of quiet reflection and tension. Staff members, while committed to their duty, felt the emotional strain of providing care for someone who could no longer interact with the world. Nurses spoke of the surreal experience of performing routine procedures on a patient who was effectively gone. Doctors discussed their decisions in long meetings, often questioning themselves and their moral compass. Everyone involved understood that the fetus's survival depended entirely on the stability of a body that could no longer function naturally. The weight of responsibility created a unique and unprecedented pressure in the hospital halls. Meanwhile, the family navigated waves of grief, hope, and doubt. Each visit to the hospital was emotionally exhausting, filled with moments of hope as fetal heartbeats were recorded.